Today, we have a number of superstars entering politics on the left, dubbed the Squad. This group of young Democrats are Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. Given all the excitement surrounding these young progressive politicians, you'd think it was the first time a group of young political superstars showed up in Washington claiming they're going to change everything that's wrong with the establishment. Also, ironically, many of the hurdles the Squad are facing today were set in place by a previous set of young liberals who came to Washington right after Watergate. In 1974, a group of young liberals dubbed the Watergate Babies came to Washington on a mission. Due to a high number of simultaneous retirements that year, 75 new Democrats came to Washington. These were the liberals that would turn the Democratic Party's focus away from banking, finance regulations, and corporate corruption to social issues. In fact, they immediately began attacking populist Democrats such as Wright Patman, who had served in Congress since 1929. Unlike the Squad of today, they were aggressive in their mission to take over. They immediately began aggressively plotting to take over committee seats, which they recognized as the true key to power. This was made easier by the fact there were Democrats already seated on the committee who was sick and tired of Patman's crusade against the business and banking community. Checking banks wasn't an issue for the young politicians because banks had always been under control in their generation, and businesses were decently regulated by Patman and other populists who came before them. Their generation was hit hard by the Vietnam War, racism, homophobia, and sexual harassment, and segregation. In fact, the Watergate Babies were extremely bank-friendly. Though Patman did support segregation, he also fought against the KKK, even to the point of frequently receiving death threats by the organization. Rather than to say Patman was a racist, I think it would be more accurate to say he was a man of his time. There are numerous men celebrated in American history books that clearly were racist and did nothing for the black community that wasn't attached to some major political victory. But nonetheless, these men are still admired. But prior to the takeover by the Watergate Babies, populism was the order of the day. Even Nixon was a screaming progressive in comparison to many Democrats today. In Nixon's first term, he implemented price controls on necessities such as rent and heating oil. One has to wonder what sort of progressive policies Nixon would have implemented had the country been under the threat of a deadly virus that required him to tell all Americans not to go to work. In Nixon's second term, he went even further by increasing environmental safety standards on various industries. Again, this is something that even Democrats struggle with today, even with the threat of global warming and the warnings of countless scientists. The idea that modern-day extremist right Republicans would even pretend to support such a thing is laughable. But during Nixon's time, the Depression was still in the memories of many Americans, so speaking too aggressively against populist ideas was politically dangerous. Even some of the most hard righters of the time supported such things as guaranteed basic income. For example, Milton Friedman, a man who is a legend in his support of strong-arm capitalism. He was practically the inventor of spreading capitalism around the world by any means necessary, including the use of violent military coups and torture. He was literally the creator of the Chilean Chicago Boys, a group of Chilean right-wing fascists educated in the United States, care of taxpayers' dollars. But even during a time when there was no COVID-19 or anything even remotely equivalent to it, a man like Milton Friedman supported the idea of a guaranteed basic income. But Richard Nixon didn't just support the idea of a GBI. He actually attempted to pass a GBI bill. Again, this was during an environment that didn't have anything going on like COVID-19. The government was not telling people to stay home. People could still go to work for those who had work. So imagine if Richard Nixon was actually telling people to stay home, knowing that people would not have income if they were told to stay home. They would have absolutely no way at all whatsoever to pay their rent, to pay for their utilities, to pay for food, etc., etc. I think it is obvious that even someone like Richard Nixon and Milton Friedman, as right-wing as he was, would have supported the idea of a guaranteed basic income, or a GBI, at least during a time when they knew Americans could not leave home. There's a saying in politics, it's not what politicians fight over in the public eye, but rather what they agree on in the dark that's most important. Each presidential election, millions of Americans watch a televised product called the presidential debates. Some of you may be wondering why I'm referring to the presidential debates as though I'm referring to a fictional television series. While the debates may not be entirely fictional, they have been turned into kind of a semi-scripted event. We're all made to believe the candidates before us are the best that America has to offer, but this is far from true. While the debates were at one time what they appeared to be, now what you see can best be described as the greatest show on earth, produced by both the Democrat and Republican parties. Most people have no idea that our political system is actually rigged by both political parties, literally working together to protect their joint monopoly on the most important feature in American politics, the debates. They literally work together to push out the League of Women Voters, who were the first to sponsor major debates, or any candidates who may represent a threat to the corporatocracy. In 1980, the League of Women Voters included candidate John Anderson in the first of its two debates. President Jimmy Carter, who was running for re-election, objected to Anderson's inclusion and refused to participate in the debates, which went on with Anderson and the Republican candidate Ronald Reagan. In 1984, the campaigns of President Ronald Reagan and Democratic challenger Walter Mondale objected to many of the League of Women Voters' proposed panelists. Between them, the campaigns rejected almost 100 names. On February 18, 1987, Paul Kirk, the national chairman of the Democratic Party, and Frank Fahrenkampf, the national chairman of the Republican Party, held a joint press conference to announce the creation of the CPD. The League of Women Voters responded.
In both elections, the League stayed in the game, and we got the presidential candidates to agree to debate. The League is proud that we were able to bring Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, John Anderson, Ronald Reagan, Walter Mondale, Robert Dole, George Bush, and Geraldine Ferraro before the voters in debates that proved informative, even as campaigns were proving more and more image-driven and scripted. After the 1984 election, the League decided that it would go ahead with plans to sponsor a full series of primary and general election presidential debates in 1988. In early 1987, our site selection process and other planning already underway, the chairman of the two political parties announced plans to sponsor their own series of debates. They had set up a commission, they said, and they thanked the League for all we had done and urged us to step aside. We did not. Since their press conference that day, the League has argued that an organization set up by the political parties is not an appropriate sponsor for presidential debates. Obviously, the political parties have a huge stake in the outcome of debates and elections. And obviously, a political party will not be party to an event that puts its titular head at risk. Under partisan sponsorship, debates will become just another risk-free stop along the campaign trail.
After this, all debates concerning the presidency will become safe havens for politicians looking to avoid certain subject matters. A great system for protecting political darlings that have already been selected by the oligarchy. However, occasionally, even in this protectionist environment, a bit of truth comes out.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
The following quote is by the General Counsel of the Federal Election Commission, Lawrence Noble. The CPD is not the honorable institution it claims to be. In fact, the CPD is a corporate-funded bipartisan cartel that secretly awards control of the presidential debates to Republican and Democratic candidates, perpetuating domination of a two-party system and restricting subject matters of political discourse. Through the CPD, the Republican and Democratic candidates exclude popular third-party candidates, eliminate challenging debate formats, and avoid addressing many important national issues. The presidential debates become an exchange of sound bites rather than an exchange of ideas. The CPD represents the Republican and Democratic nominees, not the American people. Over the years, and purely for the sake of optics, the CDP has attempted to at least appear as an organization disconnected from Washington's apparatus. However, their list of honorary co-chairs read like a list of very strange bedfellows. They are as follow: Gerald R. Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. Hey guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up part 2 of how political bias in the two-party system is destroying America. Hey look, if you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell so that you'll be notified the next time I drop a video. Until then, like always, stay safe.